it about Christianity that loves corporal punishment? When I grew up and left fundamentalist Christianity, church, and the whole environment that basically had rules for everything. And it's so frustrating. Because everybody in this world, this heteronormative, and well, is it really heteronormative if everybody has to conform and nobody can be anything else? I mean, there are people that are heteronormative, don't get me wrong, but can someone really be heteronormative 100% of the time if that's the only thing they're allowed to be? Who knows? Who really knows? But in these environments, corporal punishment is godly. And that's not my opinion. I'm quoting Dr. James Dobson, the recently deceased Mr. Dobson. And Christians love to write books about how hard to hit your kids. Or if you don't hit your kids, you're not a godly parent. I mean, you would not believe the things I've read in Christian books about discipline. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to generalize here and say every single Christian parent hits their kids. That's not true. But there's something about Christianity that just worships and idolizes child physical corporal discipline. And when I was a kid, I was always taught that he who loves their kids disciplines them. I mean, nowhere in the Bible did it say you're supposed to beat on your kids. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you have to pick up a stick and hit people. But Christians always seem to go right to physical punishment. I mean, I've taken psychology classes, I've been in therapy, and I've asked many professionals, what's the best way to parent a child? And I'm not going to tell people how to raise their kids. But there have been studies that show the less you physically harm and beat on a kid, the more likely they are to understand their emotions, to learn how to control their emotions, and they're not going to stuff their emotions. Kids who survive childhood, whose parents spank them, you notice when they get older, they're less likely to express their emotions. They're more reserved. Plus, in my opinion, based on a lot of psych research, hitting your kids is a lazy way to parent. Hitting somebody does not make anything work. Imagine picking up an appliance and just hitting on it, like beating it on the counter. That doesn't do anything. You just scratch it up and harm it. Corporal punishment, I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't believe in beating on people. I think the best way to parent a child is by taking the time to explain to children why something's wrong, why we don't hit people, why we don't steal, why we don't murder. It's all about autonomy. Teach your child nobody has a right to invade someone's personal space without acting, without asking, without getting consent. You don't just walk up to a stranger and hug them unless they put their hands out, giving the inclination they're expecting a hug. You just don't do that. Parenting in religious circles, and I've met a lot of parents, I honestly believe they don't know what their kid is doing. I went through a lot of Sunday school classes where kids up to the age of 14, when they were found to be disruptive or have an inability to sit still and be quiet, they would take them to the nursery. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's how it was in Baptist churches. There are so many better ways to raise your kids without beating on them. It's like, what are you doing? Corporal punishment is a lazy way to get your kids to understand the gravity of autonomy, consent, and treating everyone with the respect they deserve. I mean, you don't have to like it. But at the end of the day, we have social rules because everyone has a right to live the way they want to. And when I was spanked physically, up until, I want to say 13 or 14, my parents didn't have a dialogue with me. And they never expressed that them physically disciplining me, they never said they still loved me or that what I had done didn't pull away unconditional parental and child relationship. One of the best ways to raise children is to make sure they know 100% of the time that if I'm disciplining you, it's because I love you and that I'm not retracting my unconditional affection. How many times as a kid did I hear my parents say, well, I'm the parent, I'm in charge, get with the program? That's not what a good parent says. A good parent does not make you feel like a lesser person. Yeah, they are the person of authority in the home. But if your kid doesn't feel like they can come to you and ask you about anything, and keeping an open relationship, open door policy, it's like, what are you doing? My parents shut down communication. If I wasn't perfect, I got disciplined. And I mean, say what you will, but my siblings and I were as perfect as you could possibly be. We didn't do drugs. We didn't have illicit sex, even though now that would be normal. We weren't in any gangs. We didn't do any violence or crime. We were like in a movie, how you expect the goody girl or the nerd to behave. Like, they don't get in trouble, they're bookish, they're like the perfect child in a teen comedy. That's the kind of person I was. I never got in trouble with the law, never did anything. Yeah, I might have taken a piece of candy, but that's just normal developmental behavior. I did nothing to warrant having a month without a door. Yes, my parents actually took my door off for months. And some of my siblings, if you've watched my deconstruction videos on my childhood and my siblings' childhood, you'll know that most of them lost everything they owned because they weren't perfect enough. And my parents would punish us with physical, corporal punishment or just taking our belongings forever. And it's just not a healthy way to have a relationship with parent and child. And looking back, it's like, ugh. And I'm not a child or family psychologist. I don't have that training. But I have watched documentaries where people who have multiple PhDs in family psychology and child psychology where they talk about what is and isn't good to do in parenting. Corporal punishment shuts down communication. And if your kids are afraid of you, that's not the kind of relationship you want as a parent. You want to teach kids right from wrong. You don't need religion to do that. And you don't need a belt or a paddle to do that. It's lazy parenting. And I don't plan on ever having kids, but if I ever watched kids and babysitted kids, I don't want to hit kids. It makes me uncomfortable. But there's just something about Christianity that glorifies capital and corporal punishment. You don't have to hit your kids. And if you're the kind of person that wants to hit your kids or thinks that's how punishment is supposed to be given out, that is a messed up way to parent. And yeah, my parents grew up in the 50s and 60s where that was the standard way parents discipline. But just because something was popular doesn't mean it didn't harm kids' psyches. And corporal punishment is not the way I even want to think about being a parent. If I have kids someday, which 0% that's going to happen, but if we were to imagine that I would have at least one child, nothing in the world would possess me to hit my kid. It just would not compute ever. If you don't have the time to teach kids about boundaries, autonomy, keeping your hands to yourself, treating people the way you want to be treated, don't have a child. Children go through enough crap without being hit by the people they're supposed to feel safe around. And books that Dr. James Dobson wrote have been debunked by the best child psychologists in America. Hitting your child is a form of abuse. Now, slapping their hand to keep them from touching a fire or something hot that could burn them? No. Because sometimes you have to grab the kid or smack their hand because there's not enough time to have a conversation. But spanking is just not appropriate. It's not okay. It's messed up. And it causes more problems than you want. You want to parent in a way that opens up communication barriers, where children feel comfortable being around you and they want to have a close relationship. Children who are spanked by their parents, I've seen a lot of statistics by medical journals that children who are spanked by their parents can sometimes have issues bonding and being comfortable around authority figures. And yeah, my parents spanked me because they loved me, but there are much better ways of doing it. And some of it my parents didn't know about because, who had access to that in the 70s and 80s? Especially in Alaska, right? But now there's no excuse. You couldn't learn anything with Wi-Fi. It never ceases to amaze me how Christianity seems to love corporal punishment. There's so many better ways. And just because the Bible says he who spares the rod spoils the child doesn't mean you have to beat your kids. Corporal punishment is just wrong.